Superman Lex Luthor Special Issue 1, Joshua Williamson, and Eddie Barrows on the arts. It is a part of the Superman run. I was expecting an oversized issue, though. I was surprised it was only a regular page count.
Yeah, when I got done reading it, I got to the last page. I was like, oh, we're done. Okay, cool. Like,
yeah, because the lowest one was like a double-sized page count, so I was kind of expecting it from this one. Don't get me wrong, this was like my 10th book, so I was pleased that it being a bit more digestible.
In order to make sure I could read everything on time, I read this last week.
Right. Okay.
Right. So I am dealing with it on with a bunch of space. So but from my memories, I mostly liked it. It's just that same pacing issue that I've had with Williamson on Superman, where I feel like we have all these pages just to get to, a small thing happening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree with that complaint per se, because I actually think I have the opposite complaint usually with Williamson, is that he goes through too many plot ideas too quick. I kind of appreciate that this was so focused and just had one point it wanted to make by the end. Now, did I think the execution of every beat here is perfect? Not necessarily, but for the most part, I like, we basically Mr. Terrific asked Superman for help because there's only one person that can maybe help him like contact this other, the absolute universe, basically. They're not calling it that yet, of course, but that's what they're talking about. And he's like, hey, there was one person who was helping, and unfortunately that person now doesn't remember who he is, and that is Lex Luthor. So yeah, Superman comes to see Lex and sort of, ask him if like he's starting to remember anything, and Lex is like, hey, I mean, I don't know if I really want to remember who I was. Doesn't sound like I was a good person. And this is right after he's had ice cream thrown at him from civilians who are like,
yeah, he's been milkshaked.
Yeah, you should be in prison, Luthor. You disgusting, violent. And Mercy's like his new girlfriend and is sticking up for him. It's the whole thing. And it gets kind of awkward because when he says, like, really, Superman, do you really honestly think the world's a better place with Lex in it? And Superman can't quite give it a proper answer. He just gets kind of awkward and says, you know what, this is your choice, I shouldn't be pushing, and he flies off. And it does feel kind of like a bitter moment where, Superman can't bring himself to honestly say that he thinks the world's better with Lex in it. It's a decent moment, and obviously throughout the whole issue there's these little flashbacks to Lex as a kid, because one of the framing devices is that Lena has got him a piano because when he was younger he played piano, so it was something his mother had him do. And we see these flashbacks of him playing piano, his mother encouraging it, but his father being this drunk who was like, why is he playing a piano, you're making him soft, you're doing this, you're doing that. And he's also a science nerd, he builds a whole thing. So anyway, to cut the story short, he builds this transmitter to beam his music out into space, and his dad sort of makes fun of him for it in the flashback. So young Lex goes out into a field, turns on his little thing, and beams his music out to travel out. But the little twist here, if you want to call it that, is that the music actually travels to the Kent house in Smallville, and it actually cheers up a crying baby Clark. Where the Kents are like, hey, we can't get him to shut up, this is scary, how do we comfort him?
Yeah.
And then they don't hear it, of course, but like the music's at such a pitch that his Superman ears, or super baby ears, I guess, can hear it, and it calms him down. And it's kind of this thing where a long time ago Lex somehow actually helped baby Clark out, and the issue ends with Lex going over to the piano and playing music that he played once before, and Superman and Lois, because she's got super hearing now too, hears it, and Superman says he recognizes it, and he has the realization at the end of the issue that Lex remembers because he's playing this music again. So I think it's a solid ending. It's a nice way of doing it. It's definitely, I think I appreciate that it's a lot more low key than I thought him getting his memory back would be. Like I could have seen like a whole big thing where Williamson would have him like, oh, he secretly has been remembering for like months, and he's been doing things, he's been manipulating, and or equally I could see, oh, he's been faking, he's been remembering for a while and he's been faking that he's still got amnesia, but not out of malice, just because he actually kind of likes the way people are treating him, and he likes being this new version of himself, or something.
I will say I do love the music aspect of it, being that They need him to figure out because of the vibrational frequency and whatnot,
Mm.
because that's what the totality was dealing with. And so, but it's music is that thing that makes people remember, right? Because it's like so ingrained in memory and soul and whatever else you want to say. And it's this thing that also ties him and Clark together, right? It's almost like their fates will always be intertwined. And that was just the reminder is when Clark hears that music, you know, like he might not know, like he might not fully remember it, right? But it hits that part of him. And so it also is playing with the whole memory aspect of things. So,
admittedly, I am on the record, and I do maintain this, that I would prefer that Lex and Clark have never had any interaction of any kind until Clark comes to Metropolis as Superman.
mm-hmm.
But, I mean, as far as this goes, though, it's not like some big thing where they interacted with each other. It's more of like a happenstance that they don't even really know about. So, I can accept this a bit more than my normal complaints of young Lex and Clark knowing each other.
How'd you feel about Lionel looking just like John Glover?
To be honest, that's what Lionel looks like to me, because it's the most memorable version of Lionel Luthor, because it's not like Lionel Luthor is a huge character in the comics who shows up a lot. So
no, but it always just cracks me up when they give him the hair, and you know that is just John Glover's hair from Smallville. You know, there's multiple ways to draw an older. You know, like Lex Luthor's dad.
Oh, sure.
But that's what they're playing off of.
Yeah, but how many artists who are drawing comics today have seen Lionel in a comic book, but have seen him in the show?
But that's what I'm saying, is they could literally do anything with Lionel, right?
Well, but I'm saying they have one point of reference, so they're going to reference it.
Yeah. So, but that always just cracks me up, you know? But yeah, and the tragedy of Lex Luthor is something that I'll always not admire. That's the wrong word. His tragic upbringing with his dad and constantly wanting to be, you know, prove himself, and the way that works into his relationship with Superman, of like you said, that beautiful thing from Superman for All Seasons, that Lex Luthor was a good person until Superman took all the attention. You know, just kind of that vibe. Like, he could do great things, but he's always been jealous of Superman. And just so to see this, you know, his upbringing with the music and just wanting to please his dad. And again, maybe I'm just getting into my own personal psychology of it. But there's just a tragic aspect of Lex that resonates with me.
Yeah, I like Eddie Barrow's art quite a bit. I think there's a nice moodiness to it. Which I think fits kind of, because this is kind of like a personal story of someone remembering a bad version of themselves, so it should have a bit of mood to it. So, you know, the extra shading on the faces, and it's not like Eddie doesn't do happy moments. Like, you know, moments of Mercy smiling while she's holding an ice cream does come across quite well as a nice happy thing. But when you get to the flashbacks and you've got all just this black and white art that's really moody, really heavy on the inks. It's really painting this kind of tortured soul aspect that the issue is going for. So
I will say the smiles look creepy on the Kents, though. I will say that they're just a little bit too big. But you know, that's just
yeah, I could see it. I can almost. Joe, they look like they're sort of doing that thing where they're smiling down at Baby Clark, but they're trying not to move their lips as they speak because they're worried that they'll stop him from being happy. They're trying to like don't move a muscle. He's happy. He's nice and docile. Let's not ruin it now. That's what it feels like to me.
No, yeah, and absolutely. I just think they look, with the shading and everything, and the black and the white, and you're saying the somber tone, that expression comes off as creepy. You know, so that's all.
Yeah. So, I mean, this obviously has one main plot beat that it's important for the run, and that is Lex is remembering who he was. Now, how does Lex react to how he's felt when he's not had memories these past, you know, months or whatever it's been that this has been taking place over? That might be curious to see. Also, shout out, apparently the EBER is also on the art in this. I didn't notice that. It wasn't on Comic Geek, so I missed it.
Yeah.
I presume the flashbacks are.
Those look like Barrows, though.
You think? So you think the colors stuff is EBER?
Maybe. I don't know, because their styles are both similar. I know they work together a lot, though. So it could be something like they, you know, that FERREIRA did the inks, You know, because it's listed as art with different colorists.
Yeah, there's no ink credit, so yeah.
No.
So at the very least, one of them's doing the inks, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, but their styles are very similar, so I can't tell much of a difference. Because it does look like Eddie Barrows on both the color and the black and white.
It does to me as well, which is why I never questioned the credit I read as just being Eddie Barrows, because they both look like Eddie Barrows to me. Yeah. It makes sense though that the flashbacks would be the different artist, whoever it is, but they're similar enough that I never really questioned it too much.
Yeah. I'm also curious what the music sounds like, so people can read music and have time, right? If we could hear what the song that Lex is playing is. If it's an actual, you know what I mean? Like if someone took the actual time to make a fun melody.
I would bet that it's not that someone wrote something. It's more just that they looked up a piece of copyright-free music and used those notes because they had to look right.
That'd be very funny.
Yeah.
It's just like the hold music that you have to listen to.
That said, though, I don't even know if it has to be copyright-free technically, because it's just writing down the music.
It's written down, right?
Yeah.
It's not the full composition.
Yeah. Plus, obviously there's bits missing because it goes off. It goes off page and comes back on. Yeah. So even if technically this is the music notes to, I don't know, like I would do anything for love. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I will do anything for Clark, but I won't do that.
I feel like that is their relationship, though.
Yeah, because when Joker sings to Batman, it's I would do anything for bats, and I will do that. He'll do anything.
Yes.
No limits. No limits on his kinks.
Not to that smiling man.
Honestly, I mean, admittedly, the only critique I would have of this is that this really could have just been the next issue of Super. Like, this doesn't need to be a special. This just reeks of, hey, we have to get through more story by a certain issue for some reason, so let's just carve this one out and say it's a special one-shot.
This would take too much away from a Doomsday plot.
Yeah, or equally, they could have just double shipped for 1 month and called this issue whatever we're on. I don't remember, but...
Well, it said this to be continued in 24, so this could have been...
This could have been 24, yeah. And it could have just went back to, 25 for the next one. I mean, maybe it would have made more sense to start it before the arc that we're on, but... Yeah, it just feels like another issue of Superman.
Well, it also, like, because it's not really an annual, but it feels like a story that would have been in an annual, you know?
Well, no, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying it feels like it's just another issue of Superman.
But haven't we had this conversation that you like it when it's just the next part?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It feels like it's separate while also being a part of it, you know?
Yeah, but it's not an annual, so they could have just called this the next issue.
Okay, we're splitting hairs.
At least the Superwoman one at least was double size, so they had in theory, I mean, arguably it was too long for what it was, but in theory you can understand why it was a separate issue. Anyway, what were we rating it? Gonna go.
I'm gonna give this a 7.5.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I won't quite call it great, but I think it's perfectly solid enough. That's what it is. I do like the art.